Hey, hi everyone. This is Ranmay here on your show E-Coffee with Experts. Today we have Andrew Lee Millis, who is a 15-year bootstrap startup marketing expert, also known as at Andrew Startups. And welcome to our show, Andrew.
Hey, Ranmay. Thank you so much for having me. Excited to be here.
Great. And Andrew, before we go forward and your insights about your startups and the journey so far, I request you to introduce yourself so that our audience understands whom are we speaking to, what is the journey thus far.
Of course. So I'm an early stage startup marketing guy. So at the very birth of digital marketing, I was graduating college in 2007 and I had a startup of my own. And I realized I'm not really passionate about all the other aspects of running a business, but I was very passionate and somewhat talented even early on with marketing. So long before the term growth hacking existed, I developed a large skill set in different digital marketing channels and went and worked for various companies, drove a $190 million startup exit, 2 other small exits after that. And then I wrote a book about how to growth hack early stage companies. I do public speaking around the world. I have an agency, a coaching program, online courses, all focused on helping early stage bootstrap startup founders. A lot of people and agencies overlook early stage startups because they don't necessarily have the biggest budgets. But for me, it's the most exciting, passionate, early, risky, and rewarding time. So that's what I focus on.
Super. Like you mentioned, you have led 3 successful VC-backed startup exits. Could you please walk us through some strategies around it?
Yeah, of course, that's a very broad statement, but essentially different startups can exit at different times, but an exit isn't the only successful goal. And I've had several companies that are still around now that I helped launch that are doing 8-9 figures. But for the exit specifically, a lot of growth hacking stuff really is the major hockey stick moment that leads to an exit. And just an example is, let's say the first exit I was head of marketing of was in the Middle East, and it was a classified site. And we had about 20 or so competitors at the time, but our product was superior. We were the only product out there that was asking for a local mobile number. So we were ensuring the safety of our users. We were reducing the amount of scams, better user experience. And so when you have that level of confidence in the product and service and what you're putting out there, you can be very aggressive with the marketing. And that's what I specialize in, is helping founders realize that we can do these different kinds of strategies that don't necessarily cost a lot of money. They cost a lot of time and effort and the consistent scientific tests. And with this company, we did lots of those tests. One of which that led to the $190 million exit was scraping all the mobile numbers off of all of our competitor sites and then bulk SMSing those people at scale, thousands of people per day. Hey, I saw your car online. You should check this website. Hey, I saw your job online. You should use this website. And the product takes over after that short message. I don't need to be overly salesy and send a massive paragraph. I send a short line and then the product took over and we had thousands and thousands of new users a day. People were realizing that these other competitors had inferior product, and all of those companies went out of business very quickly. And this company led to an exit. So that's an example of the types of strategies, but I do many other things. We do PR and we growth hack PR without needing a budget. We do influencer marketing, content marketing, search marketing. All of that can be driven originally without a large paid advertising budget. And that's what I specialize in.
Great. And you have been part of so many early stage startups. What do you believe that are the most critical steps that one should take in early stage when you're just venturing out into the market with your business ideas or even funding? What are those important critical steps at the beginning of the business launch, business launch?
Great question. So all startups, when they reach out to me, they say they're ready to grow. Hey, we want thousands of users, but that's not the first step for me. First step is what I call finalizing the marketing foundation. And that means finalizing the product for virality. So I'm going through the product, making sure that it's optimized. There's no bugs. There's everybody. It could be website, could be mobile, could be even a service and experience. But whatever it is, we want to make sure that's optimized, or pushing people to bring in social shares, referrals, import contacts, review on the App Store, whatever it is. We want to make sure that the product is ready for marketing first. We're moving as much friction as possible from the conversions that we want to happen. Then it's analytics. Then it's your search ranking. So if we're doing the SEO of a website and finalizing the website, that's part of the online foundation or the marketing foundation. Then it's app store listing if there's a mobile app. And then the last part of that is really like the social bios and the messaging of the company. So that's really step one. You need to finalize all of that. And a lot of times it's a kind of a fight back and forth with the founder. They want to move fast. Oh, Andrew, it's good enough. But the more we can optimize that, the better the next phase will be, which is the going to market. And so with go to market, depending on the budgets that we have a blend of paid and unpaid channels. If there's no money and there's plenty of time to grow the company, then we focus on growth hacking and organic channels that don't cost any money. If we have a big budget and very little time and we need to grow fast, we lean more heavily on paid user acquisition. But overall, this phase 2 is about testing different marketing channels and developing a marketing strategy that's based on data and what will work. So figuring out what landing pages, what features, what call to action, what prices, what products, what types of content, what channels work the most. And then in phase 3, it's scaling that up. And that doesn't always mean just pouring a bunch more money on the fire. That can mean scaling up certain channels and initiatives with more team. Oh, social media worked really well. Hiring a social media manager. So phase 3 is all about scaling those things up. And then somewhere along the lines after that phase 2, we should be able to raise money as well, if that's a desire for the company. And so the resources are then there and we scale those things up after that.
And then initially, a lot of businesses make those mistakes, right? And that is why they lag behind versus their competition. So what is your advice, or out of your experience, what are those common mistakes that any business should avoid in their early stage?
So one mistake I see founders make a lot is thinking that they know everything. You don't know. I don't care if you had 30 years success in construction industry. When you make your startup, you don't know what you don't know. And so you can only trust the data. Obviously, I have 17 years experience in the industry. You can listen to what I say, but you have to still test everything that I say as well. You cannot just take what Andrew says as fact. And so problem number 1 is not being data driven. You cannot trust your hunch. You cannot tell me that blogging doesn't work for your industry or whatever. We have to test it. And so being data driven, testing everything is number 1. The second problem I see a lot of is thinking that the company is ready for marketing just because they've been developing the product for so many years. Andrew, you've helped so much. We finalized the product. It's done. We're ready. I'm like, no, actually, we need users to tell us that the product is ready. So we finalize the product in that marketing foundation. Then we usually push it out to beta testers if we haven't launched yet. And we're not just pushing it out to friends and family. A lot of times founders do that. Oh, my mom and grandma said the app is amazing. Of course, they're not going to tell you about bugs. They're not going to know how to accurately test the product for actual deficiencies and issues. So we actually get real beta testers, paid and unpaid early users, influencers in the space, friends and family, partners, all the above to test the product. And then in aggregate, if we see data showing that they're using it multiple times, referring it to other users, recommending it to friends, or even giving 5-star reviews organically, loving the features that we have, boom, only then is the company really ready to go to market. Those are the 2 main problems that I see a lot.
Yeah, very well described. The self-diagnosis problem. A lot of founders, they already believe that they know the problem, and then they come up with, give me this as a solution. As marketers, we should be the ones acting as doctors, understanding the problem and then providing a solution versus what problem they have come up with, their understanding, and then just devising the solution that way. Great. And what has been your one challenging experience in growing an early stage startup, and how did you overcome those challenges?
So I had my first project in San Francisco, raised $2.5 million. I joined as a travel technology company, and we were trying to be B2C. We were going to we had some algorithms for personalizing hotel and flight search. So the idea was we're going to make the next Expedia or the next Travelocity or the next Booking.com website. $2.5 million is not enough money to compete with a company spending $1 billion a month on paid search, which is actually what their budget is at Booking Group. We had to pivot to B2B, and this is 10 years ago. I didn't have any experience in B2B marketing. So rather than leaving the company, I thought, you know what, this is a great opportunity for me to learn. So I started reading and consuming everything, going to events, listening to courses, blah, 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 investing in time and money into learning B2B marketing. And we were in 2.5 years, we were able to drive an exit for that business solely driven by marketing. And I did that through really learning how to do PR for a B2B company, learning how to do content marketing. I researched and wrote and created a white paper on the future of personalization for the travel industry. I did the whole PR campaign around writing and releasing that white paper that drove the leads that eventually led to pilot, that eventually led to the exit of that company. So that was a very big challenge, one of the biggest in my career. It took 2 years to fully become an expert in B2B marketing. And what's funny is at the time I was like, I'll never do this again. And now I'm almost solely focused on doing marketing for B2B SaaS companies because over and over again, I can replicate the same strategies. This was a SaaS company as well. And it's a lot less loose ends than B2C marketing. So I'm absolutely in love with B2B marketing as well now, but I do both. And so that was a challenge, but I overcame and it led to a $11 million exit for a company that only raised $2.5 million. So we were pretty excited about that.
Superb. Those maths are good for sure. And talking about startups, a lot of startups, in fact, most of them, they want leads from day one, right? Because they want their phones ringing. So what is your lead generation strategy for startup businesses? Because when we sit down with these founders, they just want their phones ringing just like yesterday.
Of course.
How do you work around this plan?
I love founders that recognize that leads are the most important thing. And that's why I was saying I really like B2B because you actually only need two things, promotion and leads.
Yeah.
You need leads to have conversations, like you said, the phone ringing, but the promotion actually helps close those deals because when you reach out to someone, it's actually not enough to just send them a message and, they need to be interested. No, you need content from other reputable sources talking about your business, talking about you, talking about the problem that you're solving to instill confidence in that customer and actually push the deal along. And the promotion can be PR, speaking at conferences, doing podcasts, getting interviewed in the media. Those things add to the success rate of that outreach. But from an outreach perspective, there's really two main channels. And it differs depending on your business. If you're selling solutions to restaurants, a lot of restaurant owners can be attracted and approached via TikTok, Instagram, Facebook. But for the majority, it's email and LinkedIn. And so I create strategies starting with manual outreach. And then eventually, like I said, in phase 3, scaling up using automation. But we start by doing the user persona research, coming up with the ideas of the different people we want to target. Oftentimes founders will be like, oh, any business owner can be a customer. Let's drill that down to the guaranteed most early adopter user personas. And let's test 2 or 3 of them to really figure out who is it. So where are they? What age are they? What stage of business are they? We want to test what industries they're in, what roles inside the company. We can test a lot of the stuff to answer those questions through doing manual outreach organically via LinkedIn and via email. And so we start that off manually. And then I have some software that I'm not going to share for free on this podcast that we use that scales up either of those strategies with automation and keeps the phones ringing, like we said.
Great. And with startups comes a word like just next to it, budget and resources and limitation of it. Correct. What is your advice to those startups with limitation on budgets or starting out with and you're looking to scale on a budget? So what is your advice to them?
So it depends where you're at and what kind of business and what kind of industry it is. But I think the first thing is learning what growth hacking is and learning how to optimize your product, your experience for virality. So that's the number one thing is how can I squeeze more juice out of the customers I already have or the product I've built or the time I take to acquire one user or a customer? How can I turn that into a marketing engine to create more? So that's what's called a K factor. And that's the most important thing, I think, from the beginning. If you have no money, how can you turn every new user into 5 or 10 new users? The second thing is buy my growth hacking book called the Startup Growth Book. It's startupgrowthbook.com. The whole book, I literally wrote it with no ROI for myself to help Black and brown and female and international founders far away from venture capital get access to growth hacking strategies. And there's 10 different chapters, and every chapter talks about free ways to use every marketing channel. I think that product hacking is the first thing, but then it's how do you hack into existing communities to get access to those users? And I think beyond that, the lead generation that we were talking about is a really great way. It's just sending messages to get your early customers. And then the last thing is really partnerships. So a lot of times it is easier to close a partnership that will lead you to thousands of customers than it is for you to get thousands of customers on your own if you don't have the budget to do so. As I was telling you, Ranmay, before we started recording, a large part of my business is partnering with app and web development agencies around the world that build MVPs for startups. A lot of times when they're finishing up with their client, the client doesn't know marketing. It's a great way for me to start helping that client. So we work together to drive that partnership drives business revenue for my businesses. So thinking about what partnerships can you work with to start your business, get some revenue coming in the door, because those partnerships tend to work pretty quickly. And then that revenue can be reinvested. I'll just give an example. I had an e-commerce startup in my coaching program, which normally I'm coaching tech startups, but I really liked the product. It was the world's first camel milk skincare line a few years ago, and they didn't have a ton of money, and the coaching program was quite expensive for them. And so I spent the first month, finalizing the product and the messaging and everything that we said, the marketing foundation. But to go to market, we started through partnerships. So rather than them doing DTC e-commerce online, which costs a lot of money and you need to really get thousands of traffic to your website, we focused on partnerships with hotel spas instead. And in 1 month of outreach, they had reached $100,000 in sales to hotels and a high profit margin, which I wasn't sure exactly what it was, but they were able to reinvest that money into paid user acquisition, focusing on direct to consumer. And they're still around today doing very well.
Great. And before we let you go, Andrew, this has been a really engaging conversation. It brings me to the burning topic of today in marketing or digital marketing and overall industrial this thing. What is your take on AI, chat GPT, and content writers getting scared for their jobs? How do you think it's all going to pan out in another 5-10 years, maybe?
Yeah. So I think you shouldn't be scared at all about anything. If you should be adapting and learning and changing always. And these are tools to make your job better. They're not tools to replace you. That's just media BS. I think that with any major technological innovation, there's often large shifts. There used to be phone numbers that people would call 50 years ago to ask for information about anything. And now we have Google. And of course that job changed, but those people didn't become homeless on the street. They have to adapt and change. Usually when there's major technological innovations, there's only one generation that's negatively impacted. And it's really the people that refuse to adapt and learn. So for myself, I was working remotely for the last 15 years. So COVID and the way that all these things changed, it didn't really change my lifestyle very much. I actually benefited quite a bit from the lockdown and all those things. I wrote my book during that time and I wasn't able to travel as much. And so I saved a lot of money and it helped me quite a bit. But I was already ahead of the curve, whereas some people who had an office-based job that couldn't do their job were very impacted. And so I think number one is figuring out how to adapt and use the tools for what you need to do rather than being scared of them and staying away and talking negatively about it. Number two is future-proofing your career by assuming that the technology is going to get where it says it's going to get and figuring out what you can do that the technology will never be able to do. So if you're a creative writer, if you're a copywriter or anything, it's the creativity that can't be done. And so you can use ChatGPT to write your rough drafts. You can use it to create ideas and lists, but the human brain still, it's not going to be able to erase our creativity. So if you can add that element into what you do and make that a unique selling point of working with you, I think you're going to be okay. And for me, everybody's, ChatGPT is erasing the need for marketers. Bullshit. My business is booming and I'm helping more startups now than ever. And we are using ChatGPT to be more efficient. In my book and in my online courses, I talk about 50 different tool recommendations. I haven't made an online course about ChatGPT because there's a lot of 19-year-olds doing that and that's fine. But I think it's just another tool in our arsenal to be really effective marketers. As an early stage startup, we have a million things to do. And ChatGPT has helped me and my clients create social media content and strategy, write rough drafts of blog posts, find reporters and writers that we want to contact for PR, get stats that we use for press releases and social media. So it's a research assistant more than anything. And most of those jobs are done by unpaid interns at early stage startups and stuff. And so it's not erasing any major jobs at this point.
Superb. I just love the way you underplayed the entire thing. Superb. And then before we let you go and we wrap this up, and I would love to play a quick rapid fire with you. I hope your game.
Okay. Sure, let's do it.
Great. I thought of asking you about your favorite book now that you've traveled so much. You have written yours, so I'll skip that question, right? Yeah. So are you a morning person or a night person?
Morning person.
Okay.
Usually 7 a.m. every day. I wake up. I don't take my first call until 10 a.m. So I have 3 hours, no matter if I'm going to work a 12-hour day. I have 3 hours for myself to gym. I live on the beach, so I go walking on the beach. I cook a big breakfast every day. I clean the house and sometimes journal and things. And so I have to have that morning time for myself because I tend to work until late in the evening. And so the morning is my free time.
Great. And you got to stop because we are all going to feel jealous about your life, at least your morning life. And you also have a ocean and that sound, right?
Yeah, this background's not true. But yeah, I live on the beach in Puerto Vallarta, Mexico. I go back to San Francisco for big conferences and events and clients. It's just a direct flight. But that was the way that the COVID really helped me. Like I was saying, I was doing 10 or 15 countries a year, traveling, doing public speaking. That's why I've been to India so many times. Obviously, there's an amazing startup community in India as well. 2019, I did 17 countries doing public speaking. And then 2020 hit and I was able to settle down. And that's why I picked Mexico. It's one of my favorite countries.
Right. I was just saying that background pick of yours, which is obviously a default background, this thing is so relatable, right?
This is San Francisco. This is the Golden Gate Bridge in San Francisco, which I lived there for many years, but about 10 miles away from the Golden Gate Bridge.
Right. And what was your last Google search?
Let's find out right now. I don't know. I'm checking my history. Put me on the spot. Google. Let's see. You're not going to believe this.
Yeah.
Paisa ke barish hogi in English. That's what my last. So I told you I work.
Okay.
Paisa ke barish hogi. What does that mean in English?
You'll get a lot of money.
Yeah. Yeah. And so that was my last search to translate that. So I was on a call with a partner of mine and we're basically, like I told you, I work with Indian development agencies and we're working on a new way to start doing marketing from the very beginning of product development. So I'm coaching some of their biggest clients on marketing, messaging, and product development from a marketing point of view from the beginning. And so they texted me that, or they said that on the call. And so I Google searched what that meant, and money will rain is what it means, I think. So
loads of money.
Paisa.
Money will rain is the literal meaning of it.
Yeah.
Ideally, what we say is you will get loads of money. So don't worry.
There you go. It's a good thing to hear.
Yeah, absolutely. So especially for business owners. And then, Andy, if a movie was made on you, what genre would it be?
Action movie.
Okay. Superb. And the thing you like the most about your work?
Freedom.
Okay.
I've never had a boss in my life. And I think a lot of people who have stressful work situations with a bad boss, die from that stress early. And so I like to study all the senior citizens I meet in my life. And I have my grandparents live in a community of successful people in their 80s and 90s. And I ask all of the people who are the healthiest at 90 years old, 100 years old, none of them had a stressful work life. And so for me, at a young age, and my father and my mother are both entrepreneurs, I realized that Paisa is good, money is good, but at the expense of giving up your health is not worth it. And so I found something early on in life that I was passionate about and I stuck with it, but I made my own rules. I never allowed, even when I was working at someone else's company, I'm working with the startup founder. You can tell me what we need to do, but we're working together as a team. And that's still to this day. I don't work for my clients. I work with my clients. We both want the same result. I will work absolutely harder than you even tell me to work because I want that result. And so you don't need to, I don't work really in a stressful environment. I'm very free to do what I want, and what I want is what the client wants.
Super, very nicely you articulated it. I have a boss, but a super cool one. So stress me like, yeah,
Good.
lucky me.
Definitely.
Great. So I know it was lovely speaking with you, understanding your thought processes, the way you have scaled startups and done some exits on the way as well, successful ones. And I'm sure our audience will have benefited a lot. And I really can't thank you much for taking out time for being on this podcast.
Thank you, Ranmay. Dhanyawad.
Cheers. Thank you.